Mahama is asking us to give the NDC a honeymoon period if they win in December. There are a couple of things there. I mean, I suppose he is trying to manage expectations, right? He doesn't expect things to be rosy by the time they come in. He's trying to do something different from what other potential presidents have done, where they have promised milk and honey, you know, giving the impression that they alone would be the factor that changes us from a poor country to a suddenly wealthy and affluent one. So he's trying to sort of buck that trend, I suppose. But at the same time, the truth is that we actually do give leaders honeymoon periods in this country. We do.
A lot.
Everybody does. I mean, we will just let you go for some time. We will make excuses for you when you get things wrong in your first 100 days, your first year, to be honest. We will keep saying, oh, wait and see. When Akufo-Addo announced 120 whatever ministers, there were, I mean, my colleagues in the media, we were all hesitant to judge him. We all said, well, he himself says that it is the work that he does with these ministers that matters. So if they are able to achieve, you know, the goals that the promises that he made us, then it will have been worth it. So people made excuses for him. Not just him. We've done it in the past. Anytime someone wins an election, you get quite a free ride for a long time. It takes some time for us to be convinced that this guy just can't do what he says he can do. In the case of Akufo-Addo, I mean, he came all the way into his second term before, you know, some people became quite convinced that it will not get better than this. So, I mean, he shouldn't worry about that. I don't think that's something to call for. Rather, tell us what you intend to do from day one, so that whatever honeymoon period you are given doesn't have to be too long. That people will actually start to see differences. If even those differences don't immediately amount in increased wealth, they must result in improved life, systems, policies, institutions. You must improve something. You don't need a honeymoon period to stop spending money on unnecessary travel. You don't need a honeymoon period to stop giving out contracts to people who don't deserve it. You don't need honeymoon period to do the right thing. Maybe the results might take some time, but as for you, you must get to work from day one. No honeymoon.
I mean, I get a point. Frankly, there is exasperation about Ghanaian leadership. Yeah. But I agree that we give them a long rope. Sometimes we are needlessly patient. Sometimes we sit back and we say, no, but this wouldn't have been acceptable in other countries. So why are we tolerating this in the Republic of Ghana? I also get the other point that it appears people are becoming more impatient now. So, and the premise was saying is actually where the economy is, he's not going to overpromise. Perhaps from experience, that does not work. And I think Ghanaians even think with a pinch of salt when you start giving some certain promises. Because we know where we are. And, you know, people will look at you some way. It's almost like the humble beginning thing. Now, the other point, though, is that I think the impatience will come in whether he likes it or not. So, is the evidence, and I agree with Kojo on that, show evidence from day one. And I've heard him say that he will not have more than 60 ministers or so. I actually think that we need less than 25 to deliver in the Republic of Ghana. I do not think we need any sort of groupings called regional ministers. I actually think that if you have elected DCs, that they are responsible to the people on the ground, we don't need regional ministers because they are basically useless at that regional level. Another tier of useless group is the grouping called deputy ministers. Yes. We have chief directors, we have deputy directors. Make good use of them. The other grouping, which is completely useless and ought to be reduced immediately, is the grouping that go into the bigger scale at the office of the president, in that emblem, and all the other things we put into it to make it a very fat institution. it is an institution that ought to be trimmed down heavily. If he comes in and mentions that I've cut that institution by 1/5 of the number, forfeit. So like just 1%, 10% is what's left there. If he shows those signs, I'm sure Labour, which he was addressing directly, will be very happy. The difficulty is that when people want power, they have sweet words. When they get the power, they tend to act like irrational people. They tend to act like they are gods themselves. They forget sovereignty is supposed to be with the people. So that's why, even though on one side, if you do good, people reward you, we do not expect that anybody will come in and be given excuses going into the future. Because there's a lot of people are really disappointed in the Ghanaian project in ways that you may not even know. There's an indictment on politicians and the political class completely. So some hope ought to be restored. It will not come with just people giving you leeways. It will come with people seeing tangible things. Like not bloating your government with incompetent people and calling them ministers. So that everybody who cannot find a job ordinarily at home is now getting a job in government.
You see, Raymond, and well, if you consider the fact that John Mahama was speaking to Labour, it looks more like, you always want better conditions of service, but in a country where our output is less than what we earn, it's important that you also, and also the challenge that you cannot, no government, and we've seen it, once they intend to strike, sometimes, some way, somehow, government would always, give in to some of their demands. And so his comments are like, okay, when we come in, at least give us some bit of time to turn things around, and then you can start making the demands, which would make a lot of sense. And I've heard Professor Jampo make the point that, well, if you show signs, if you show that you're actually doing the right thing, show working. And that's also the right response, because you cannot tell me that, give me a honeymoon period when you are going around engaging in profligate expenditure, and then you expect me to turn around and say I'm going to give you a honeymoon, because once I see what you're doing, I also would say then I must also enjoy same. But you see, it's also because we live in a country
state with cronies and people who have no business in governance.
Thank you.
Look, we live in a country where we insulate our leaders from all the problems we go through, and so they don't feel how we feel. Okay, if you give an MCE, for instance, my MCE at Gais, Kakiman, you give her an Nissan Patrol, which is good for the roads, the poor roads. When she drives on the road, she won't feel it. You get the point? So when you complain the roads are bad, she doesn't feel it. Once she doesn't feel it, she doesn't know how you feel. They say who feels it knows it. And so it's important that, yes, you want to be giving a honeymoon if you win, but it would all depend on how you also govern. And like people say, to whom much is given, much is expected. Show workings. Once you show the workings, the people would agree with you.
Yeah.